So good evening all. So we'll be starting in another 1 or 2 minutes. So waiting for the people to join. Let us have a few more people join, then we'll start the program. അതിന് ഇതുവരെ രണ്ടുപേരെ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്തിട്ടുള്ളൂ. അല്ലേ? രണ്ടുപേരും ഒരു കരോലിനും ഒരു ചെറിയാൻ ജോർജ് രണ്ടുപേരും മാത്രമേ ഉള്ളൂ. ആൾക്കാരില്ലെങ്കിൽ നമുക്കും ഒരു ഇതുണ്ടാകത്തില്ല. ഇത് ജനറൽ അങ്ങനെയാണെങ്കിൽ ഇത് ആൾക്കാർ കുറവാണെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ജനറൽ ഡിസ്കഷൻ പോലെ പോകും. ഓക്കെ, നമുക്ക് വേണമെങ്കിൽ ഒരു സെഷൻ കൂടി പ്ലാൻ ചെയ്യാം.
ചെറിയാൻ ജോർജ് ഉണ്ടല്ലോ, അപ്പൊ വേണമെങ്കിൽ അത്യാവശ്യം പറഞ്ഞേച്ച് പിന്നെ കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ പറഞ്ഞു കുറവാണെങ്കിൽ നമ്മളിത് റെക്കോർഡ് ചെയ്തിരുന്നുണ്ടല്ലോ. അപ്പൊ നമുക്കത് യൂട്യൂബിൽ നമുക്ക് വീക്കാൻ മനസ്സിലായില്ലേ. നമ്മൾ എത്ര വിളിച്ചു രാവിലെ അവരെ കൊണ്ട് വിളിച്ച രാവിലെ വിളിച്ച പിള്ളേരെ വിളിച്ചാൽ രാവിലെ ഉച്ചയ്ക്കും എല്ലാം വിളിച്ച മെസ്സേജ് ഇടുന്നുണ്ട്. മെസ്സേജ്
അപ്പൊ 7:05 തുടങ്ങാം. ഓക്കെ, 7:05 ഹാഫ് ആൻ അവർ ടോക്ക് നടത്താം. എന്നിട്ട് ചെറിയൊരു ഡെമോൺസ്ട്രേഷൻ, പിന്നെ ക്വസ്റ്റ്യൻ ആൻസർ. Okay, anyway, we are going to start the program, I think in 1 minute time. 7:04 now, 7:05 will be starting sharp. Okay, good evening, everyone. Once again, welcome to Scolico. And today's session is actually an introduction to cybersecurity. As you all must be aware that we are launching a couple of programs in the field of cybersecurity. One is actually the Certified Cybersecurity Program, CCP, by Scolico. It's a 6 months masterclass program. And we also having a cybersecurity and ethical hacking summer camp. It's a 1 month long program. And having said that, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Manoj. I have more than about 24 years of experience in computing. That too, in cybersecurity and data science, I have more than 15 years of experience. And the last 5-6 years, I'm working even in artificial intelligence related areas. So let me start with a quote. It is from a very famous book called The Art of War. And it is by a very famous author by Sun Tzu. And what he says, the art of war teaches us to rely not on the likelihood of enemies not coming, but on our own readiness to receive him. Not on the chance of he's not attacking, but rather on the fact that we have made our position unassailable. So idea is very clear that we have to safeguard our system very clearly. Because cybersecurity is actually the practice of protecting our systems, our computers, our mobile phones, our networks, our data from attacks. So cybersecurity is something like a digital lock that protects your your personal, your professional life. Okay, just like the way we safeguard our home by key and lock, we must secure our entire digital world. Okay, so that in today's world, everything is connected to the internet, from banking to chatting to shopping to studying, and everything is online. And how safe we are. And every day, as you know, that there are thousands of attacks happening across the world. And many people don't even realize that they are actually victims one or other way. Okay? So cybersecurity is very important because that data is the new gold. It is more valuable than money. And hackers try to steal your passwords, your bank details, your personal information like photos, and so on. So cyber attacks can cause financial loss, even identity theft, and even damage, and even sometimes reputation. And that not just big companies, even governments, they all are being attacked or hacked. So cybersecurity is not optional; it is very essential. And there are so many different types of attacks. We will be just going through that. So let me start with a prelude. Cybersecurity is no longer optional for engineers, not just engineers, for everyone. Every sector is affected: banking, healthcare, government, education, and India is one of the top target of cyber attacks. So we know that many universities also need to prepare our students for security first computing. So let me come to the content of the course. Today's presentation, we try to go through all of them. We'll start with the cybersecurity landscape, the basic foundations. Then I will be introducing you to our cybersecurity lab. We call it as a cybersecurity ranger. And I'll show its architecture and how we need to set up it and what are the basic components of that. And I will also demonstrate some pen testing activities, some ethical hacking activities practically today, if you are interested into that. Then I'll be getting into major cybersecurity job roles, career path, and then artificial intelligence based cybersecurity method. And then we will be talking about Scolico, what are the cybersecurity and even artificial intelligence capacity building workshops and programs that we have. Then we conclude. Okay. So let me start with cybersecurity landscape and foundations. As you know that, just I have mentioned that cybercrime damages are projected and it is increasing and it is going to reach and touch $23+ trillion annually by 2027. And that ransomware attacks occurs extremely frequently, almost like every few seconds a ransomware attack happens. And 60% of cyber breaches involve human factors like phishing, weak passwords, errors, and around 4.8 million cybersecurity jobs remain unfilled globally as of 2025. So cybersecurity is one of the fastest growing and most in demand career field worldwide. Even in today's artificial intelligence stealing job concept, I mean, when we look into that aspect, still cybersecurity is considered to be one of the most demanding and most, we can say, AI safe field in the field of computing. Okay, so the world needs skilled cyber defenders, and the demand is growing almost on a daily basis. And in papers you can see many news coming about cyber attacks, which is happening in banks, with government, with various organizations, and so on. Okay? So we can say that cyber crime is the single biggest threat to every company in the world, as per the former CEO of IBM, Rometi. The reason is that there is an ever expanding digital attack surface, because the today's digital infrastructure includes the cloud, cloud native platforms, web applications and APIs, which is ubiquitous, which is available everywhere, mobile and remote work environments. We are having a proliferation of IoT devices everywhere. They're all coming with security risk. Critical infrastructure system, including even our power grids and so on. And as you know that as artificial intelligence getting evolved into a system like agentic systems, even we can have agent-based attacks, even agent-based detection system and so on, and even identity access management, software supply chain, even third-party ecosystem. They're all kind of the digital infrastructure, like even fintech system, digital payment system, data analytics platform, etc. Okay? So as this attack surface expands, as you know that the digital connectivity increases, and that creates more opportunities for the attackers or cyber adversaries to utilize all these techniques and methods, and they come up with new TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures to hack and attack. So that this is actually a diagram. This is actually a live threat map from Radware. It shows that attacks are happening almost in every almost continuously, and you can see the right side of the chart shows the various countries under attack. We have we can see the top attackers and the top attacked countries, and India is actually standing second when it comes to top attacked countries. So it's very clear that there are so many nations, or we can say state-supported actors, even when it comes to cyber warfare, espionage, etc. And there are plenty of cyber criminal organizations for they're working for ransomware, they're working for financial gain, and many hacktivist group for with certain political and ideological motives, and they all are behind cyber attacks. And you must be definitely heard about something called as the first cyber bomb, which is nothing but Stuxnet. Stuxnet is actually the very first cyber attack that could actually act like a real bomb and could damage thousands of nuclear centrifuges, which is run by Iran, and it was actually launched by America and Iran. And in today's geopolitical condition, it's not a good idea to talk more about that. But this is considered to be the very first cyber bomb. This is called a Stuxnet. And then we have various type of cyber attacks. And when we look into ransomware category, WannaCry ransomware of 2017 was very notorious or very infamous. It attacked 300,000 plus computers around more than 150 countries. And the primary victim was UK's National Health Service and many other countries, including Spanish countries like Spanish Telecom, German Railways, Honda, Renault, and many other companies, organizations, countries were being affected. Okay, and how they actually the mode of operation of ransomware was this WannaCry ransomware was it basically exploited a Windows vulnerability. Vulnerability means a weakness in the system. It is basically leaked by one NSA tool. and that was the one which is exploited. And we can see there are many such attacks. The Colonial Pipeline attack, for 2021 in US, SolarWinds attack, and if you look our Indian context, there were many attacks on AIMS in 2022. There was a many, a Domino's, India data breach, the Big Basket data breach, and Indian Railways, UPI fraud explosion in 2024-25, UPS system outage in 20. No, there are plenty of, cyber attacks which were in the mainstream, and also many attacks were, not, but the attacks were happening on a regular basis, right? And when we look into these attacks, who are these attackers? Okay, so we can call them as threat actors. One is cyber criminal groups. Their idea is very simple, financially motivated. Then other one, as I previously mentioned, state-sponsored, actors. It is actually, state-sponsored, part of, state-sponsored, espionages. And there are, activists, insider threats. That is also a problem. Actually, many disgruntled employees, being inside the organization can actually, but they actually get a better advantage because they can access internal servers and systems so easily. So many attacks are actually triggered or supported from insiders. Okay? And then there are, script kiddies. They are, they are not professionally good in the field, but they use many automated tools. Because these days, you don't have to be so good in computing, etc. Even though, just like script kiddies, there are plenty of tools to generate attacks. So attack generation is so simple and easy with the, tools which are available. Right. So what exactly is a cyber kill chain? Okay, it is actually the way how we can say an attacker goes through. We can say a structured life cycle of an attack. It begins with a reconnaissance activity. So you can see it's a reconnaissance. Basically it harvests email and collect as much information about the target. That is a very important thing. Once sufficient information has been collected about the target, then the attackers go for weaponization. It is coupling exploit with any backdoors which they might have identified. Through the backdoor, they deliver the payload. I will demonstrate how these payloads are created and delivered, etc. Once it is delivered, the delivery is a process. They will deliver this through email attachment, weakness in various web application, even through USB physical devices, and anything which is even through phishing mails and everything. They will attract the people to click on something. Many different ways of luring the target. And then once they get into the system, they started what is called as exploitation. Okay, exploiting the vulnerability to execute the code on victim system. Then they try to install various kind of things. They install malware on the asset. Then once they install everything, they get full control of the system. They get something called as a command and control of the system. I'll show you how that is being done. It's without writing even a single line of code, it is possible to have such an attack on most of our operating system, including Windows, which is supposed to be one of the most popular operating system of common people in most domains. Okay, and then so this is actually kind of a cyber kill chain. Okay, and then what they do, we have to have what we can say in actions on the objectives, like so for example, they will be getting hands-on keyboard access. They will be getting complete control of the system. Means the intruder can accomplish almost all their goals. They can even create a new administrative account. They can install a various malicious tool, and they can have they can create a persistent threat. Even after shutdown and restart, still they will be acting. Because once they install their payload, they will be continuously getting access to your system. Okay, so for covering all these things, we need to have cybersecurity. So cybersecurity, let us start by defining what is cybersecurity. So cybersecurity is the practice of protecting our digital systems, our networks, our devices, programs, and data from digital attacks. We call cyber attacks. Even from unauthorized access, from damage, from even theft, maybe data theft, etc. So this is actually the practice of protecting. It's a very actually cybersecurity is an umbrella term. it actually encompasses various things. It has, network security, cloud security, endpoint security, mobile security, IoT security, application security, and so on. Okay? So I'm not making too much theoretical, but definitely you have to know, the cyber security consists of so many things. It has the technologies, it has processes, it has practices, it has policies, and they're all basically designed to defend against any cyber threats in our, the digital world, the interconnected digital world. So that is the thing. And, when it comes to cybersecurity, there are three categories of people. Red team, as it indicates, they are more offensive in nature. Then blue team, they are more defensive in nature. And there's a purple team, they are actually a collaborative, security team. They actually integrate both, red teamers and, blue teamers. Actually, red team purely, they are actually, most of the time, we visualize them like they do unethical activity. They do some, the black hat, hacking activities. But, in cybersecurity, we don't do any such malicious activity, but we do ethical hacking. We do red team activity, but ethically. And our idea is to uncover vulnerabilities and test defenses, etc. So that is our purpose, when we say red teaming activity. So definitely in this course, we'll be discussing about red teaming activities. We'll be performing penetration testing, and our idea is to not to target our any system for any malicious activity, but our purpose is to identify or to uncover any vulnerabilities in the system. That is our purpose. So that you have to understand very clearly. Okay, and then comes the defensive security. So our idea is to protect, monitor the system to detect, response, and mitigate threats. So the idea is, if possible, try to attack any type of detect even before it actually spread into your systems. So right in the beginning, if any attacks are going to happen, if you have any clue about that, you identify some minimum amount of intrusion, you try to detect it, then you respond immediately, and you try to mitigate. You try to take full control of the system and make sure that the attack is not spread, and if possible, you stop it. Okay, so we have intrusion detection system, we have intrusion prevention system, we have SIEM tools. We'll be having in the course, we'll be discussing about various SIEM tools, which is nothing but security information and event management tools like Splunk, Wasu, etc. They all help us a lot for defending our system, and that is our primary job. Our primary job is actually blue teaming. We have to defend our system, protect our system, and of course, we cannot actually wait for the attackers to come in. As I have given in the the opening slide, I told you that according to Art of War, we have to make our system completely, so you never think that attacker may not come. Definitely attacker may come. So we have to safeguard our system. So what we do, we conduct continuously, ethical hacking activity. We conduct pen testing and identify the weaknesses, vulnerabilities, and we see how we can actually protect our system. Okay. Next, so as I told you, purple team, they do collaborative activity. Actually, they integrate, they basically communicate between red team and blue team. They analyze vulnerabilities, and they actually help developing new defense strategies. Okay, and they actually help, conducting joint exercise between these two teams, so red team and blue team, people. And these are the three important terms in cybersecurity. One is threat, next is vulnerability and risk. I told you vulnerability is nothing but weakness in your system, the weakness in your software, in your operating system, any unpatched software, any opened port, if you are using HTTP instead of HTTPS, etc. Anything which is exposing your sensitivity, that they're all considered as a vulnerability. Okay? So it is considered to be your security weakness. And threat is nothing but a potential attack. When your system is getting connected to the net, definitely there are so many possibilities, like so many different type of malware can get into your system in the form of viruses, worms, ransomware, etc. And they infiltrate into your system to steal your data and your personal credentials and everything. Okay, so it can be through various means. It can be through phishing attempt and so on. So if you see, actually the third term is risk. And what is risk? Risk is actually a product of threat and vulnerability. So assume that if you have a system which is having zero vulnerability means zero weaknesses. So if that is the case, even if there is a threat, there is no risk, because risk is nothing but threat times vulnerability, and that is highly impossible. Every system has vulnerabilities. Your operating systems are having millions of line of code developed by thousands of people, and they're all not perfect. They're all not being 100% tested for safety and security. Okay, so it's very important. So we'll be discussing more about those things. Then another thing is that how we are approaching our defensive strategy. So one strategy and most important strategy is cybersecurity. We call it as a defense in depth. We have a multi-layer security. Actually, cyber security is not one single solution, rather a layered solution. As you can see, the data should be encrypted. There should be access control mechanism. Above that, we have application. Only applications are allowed to access the data, but during that, application should have input validation. There should be host ID validation, vulnerability assessment, access control, and then the host, your machine should be protected. Then your network should be protected, and then your perimeter of the network should be protected through various things. When I say perimeter means definitely we have to deal with the firewall. We need to know how to configure firewall, etc. Okay, so defensive depth is our approach. And in the course, we will be also talking about the basic we can say basic parameters. So the basic pillars, in fact, of cybersecurity are confidentiality, availability, and integrity. It is called a CIA triad. We use encryption algorithm. We use techniques to avoid any attack on availability, like denial of service attack. Integrity is very important because we have to make sure that our data is not corrupted. The data in storage, data in transit, data when it is being used. In all these occasions, our data should have 100% integrity. Another one is authentication, how we have to protect. We should have proper authentication mechanism like digital signatures. In our course, we'll be teaching you how to have digital signatures developed, how we can have everything practically. We will see how we can use. We'll use OpenSSL kind of tools to demonstrate that. And then authorization is very important. But after having authentication, we have to check whether he has the right privilege to access. Then accounting, we definitely need to look into log files. Everything need to be accounted. There are multiple type of log files. How log files can be analyzed, this thing also will be covered part of the course. And when it comes to when it comes to cloud computing system, there is another framework called as DIE framework, which is nothing but distributed, immutable, ephemeral. Distributed means instead of having everything stored in one computer, we'll be storing in multiple systems. And we know that about distributed computing, wherein we are getting everything as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, software as a service, and so on. I'm not covering, I'm not going into a detail because we need more time on it, but let us have a generic look. And then, this is actually we can say an example topology. And that the reason why we are very serious about cybersecurity is because our systems, our personal system, our enterprise system, our computers, our servers, they're all connected through a very highly unreliable network. Internet. Okay, and we have so many components. As it is shown, we have various components. We have routers, we have firewalls, we have multiple types of switches, we have different types of servers. We have proxy servers, email server, domain servers, and various type of web servers, your local file servers. Everything is connected. Now the big question is, where we build in security and what are the type of security we can offer. Okay, we'll be covering across, because that when it comes to cybersecurity, you should be really good in networking. And our course, we'll be starting with the network aspect of the computing, and we'll be talking about various topologies. So this is actually one lab activity that we'll be doing, where we'll be configuring an IPsec tunnel, between routers, so that every data which go through this unreliable network highly protected. We encapsulate the packets. We encrypt the content of the packet. We authenticate. We check for integrity. Anything is getting modified. We make sure that there is no man in the middle attack. Man in the middle is someone, an attacker. They get into the middle, try to get advantage of anything is exposed. If anything is exposed, he try to get an advantage. So this is actually a topology which we'll be developing, and then we will be configuring it. So we'll give you complete training on networking also. Even if you don't have much of a knowledge in networking, we'll train you how to configure a network, especially with the Cisco devices, Cisco switches, Cisco routers, firewalls, how they can actually connect together. We'll make the network work. Then we will be implementing security features like IPsec. IPsec is one of the leading security when it comes to network security. Not only IPsec, we will also discuss about SSL, SSH, etc. These all things will be performing practically using GNS3. For example, Cisco has a tool called Packet Tracer. We don't use that. We use rather, very popular and very powerful emulator. Even though it's called as a simulator, we can actually emulate, the actual Cisco devices in the platform. And this is actually an example to show you. And we'll be learning all the layers of, OSI model, starting with physical layer to, application layer. We learn all the, security weaknesses, how we can protect all, starting with application to presentation, the OSI, TCP/IP models, things. And then we also will be dealing with malware. When you say malware, we have different type of malware, starting with viruses, which is a self-replicating code. Normally these viruses will get attached to executable files. One of the very infamous virus is nothing but I love you virus. And worms are actually standalone malware that spread across the network without any host files. They can actually multiply. Actually Stuxnet is a kind of a worm. And there are rootkits. Actually, these are some kind of malware. They'll be hiding deep inside the operating system. We can call it as they will be getting even root privilege. So, because when we talk about Linux, we'll be talking about root, or the administrator privilege or root account, etc. Then we have Trojans. Actually, Trojans are kind of they masquerade themselves as a kind of a very legitimate software. So when you view them, we feel that it is a kind of genuine thing. So there are different type of Trojans, and I'll be giving a lot of examples on that. And there are backdoor Trojan, banking Trojan, etc. We'll be seeing that also. Okay, so these are actually, there are so many examples we can talk about, by so many viruses, so many different type of worms, so many different types of Trojans. Examples I've given here: ransomwares, including WannaCry, even spyware, etc. And we are going to have various tools. Even we have a separate, operating system to analyze malware. See, for example, Trojan, how exactly this, for example, WannaCry works. Is that possible to get WannaCry code? Definitely we can get it, but it's not safe to practice in a normal network, right? So we have to practice in a very safe environment. And for that purpose, we have very specialized, cybersecurity ranger, and we will be looking into that. Okay, so these are all some examples of where, rootkits, bootkits, fileless malware, keyloggers. I'm going to demonstrate to you today what is a keylogger. Okay, I'm going to show you that. So we need to have various type of security controls. What type of security controls that we can have, especially when we are talking about, blue teamers, we need to, as much as possible, we need to prevent. We need to have preventive approach or preventive security control. Like we have to stop threats. Detective control, we have to identify. Corrective means we have to remediate. Deterrent means you have to discourage. There are things like honeypots. We try to deter the attack into something else. And finally, compensating any alternative mitigation techniques. So these are all various security controls we need to really understand. Okay, and when we come to the cybersecurity controls on malware, we have endpoint protection platforms, EPP. We have actually EDR, endpoint detection and response tools available. I'm going to discuss about tools, of course. Then network security controls, email security, application whitelisting. We'll be discussing about that, and the regular patch management technique, threat intelligent integration into system, and then automated malware analysis, incident response plans, etc. There are multiple controls on this type of malware. We'll be definitely going through all these things in detail when you come to the course. So when we generally looking into cyber attack vectors or methods, we can categorize them like this. One is social engineering attacks. So when you look into social engineering, the very first thing is phishing attack, wherein the victims are being attracted towards some fraud, some fraudulent link. Yeah, they will be receiving some mails, some messages, and their idea is to basically to steal credentials. Okay, and 95% of these social engineering attacks are related with the phishing attack. In the course, we will be actually modeling phishing attack. We will be actually working with the real email servers. I will make you to install real email servers. We'll create an email server, and then we'll have email clients. Then we have a phishing attack generated. We'll be having a phishing link generated, and we'll be discussing how this phishing thing can be detected. We also use artificial intelligence technique to detect whether an email has a phishing link or not. So such a project we have done many number of time, and you also will be definitely doing such projects. And spear phishing attack, we are targeting in individuals or organization. Then whale phishing, actually targeting high profile people. Then phishing attack, voice based attack, phishing attack, SMS based phishing attack or smishing, creating fake scenarios to extract information called as pretexting, baiting, which is offering something very attractive to trigger any malicious download so that you make the people to click things like that. Then technical based attack, like SQL injection attack, sometimes we pronounce it as SQL injection attack. It is exploiting database vulnerabilities, and there is something called as OWASP top 10 attack, and SQL injection is, it is listed in it. It is actually Open Web Application Security Project. It's an international standard, in the organization. They actually come up with top 10 vulnerabilities in web applications, and that is nothing but OWASP. And we need to definitely handle them in most of the web applications. So we'll be talking about cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, man-in-the-middle attack, DDoS attack, zero-day exploit, etc. We need a lot of time to exploit each one of these concepts, but let me only explain briefly about that. Okay. Now, what are the future, what are the, emerging threats? What are the, when we look into the future battlefield, what are the basic domains? The one most important thing is nothing but AI-powered attacks. Like we know about deepfake, AI-generated audio, video, AI-generated images for deception, and AI-enhanced phishing techniques, automated vulnerability discovery techniques, adversarial AI, like the attacks which are designed to fool or even to manipulate AI models, etc. That is also a thing. So, and then IoT and infrastructure attack, like IoT botnet, smart city vulnerabilities, industrial control system attacks, supply chain attack, etc. Then again, with respect to cryptocurrencies, with respect to blockchain, with respect to cloud and mobile, they're all basically, we can say, we can enlist, we can see all these categories of attack. Right. Now, what are the what are the tools that we are going to actually use? As I have told you, we are doing both, red teaming activity, blue teaming activity, even up to some extent the purple team activity. So we will be performing pen testing activities, basically try to exploit a target, basically to identify the weakness in the system. We use Metasploit framework, we use burp suite, we use OWASP, we use SQL map. There is a tool called as Beef, which is nothing but browser exploitation framework, etc. That is one category of tool. Okay, and some of the important tools like Metasploit we are using, burp suite we are using, SQL map we are using. We will give introduction to even OWASP, SAP will be using. Then next one is, so that is nothing but penetration testing. The idea is you try to find out vulnerabilities or weakness in a target system, in your operating system, in your application, in your system in general. The next one is network scanning and discovery. You try to scan the network, try to capture as many number of packets, analyze it. You generate certain type of, using certain tools, like for example, we use ping, we use traceroute, we use netstat, these type of tools, along with more advanced tools like Nmap, mass scan, Wireshark is for packet capturing and analysis. Even many things can be done with Wireshark. Even there is Ethercap, even TCP dump, but there are plenty of them. I only listed some of them, some of the top one. Then vulnerability access management, there is OpenVAS, Nessus, we'll be definitely going through that. Then password cracking and credential attack. Passwords need to be very strong, but there are so many different ways of attacking passwords. For example, one of the very important tool is nothing but John the Ripper. We use John the Ripper to try to identify whether is that possible for us to, when we get a hash, because normally these days we don't store the password anywhere. Even when you enter your password, immediately the password will be converted into a hash. That hash will be stored, and we'll never actually keep any password open, right? So that way, we have actually a lot of tools to deal with the password cracking. Then network forensics is very important. Digital forensic is very important. We'll be talking about volatility. It is actually memory forensic. And this is one domain where a lot of capture the flag competitions are being done. Will make you so perfect in these tools like volatility for memory forensic, autopsy for digital forensic investigation, and I've already have mentioned about an operating system for malware analysis called a Remnux. We will install Remnux in a system. Then we have a SIEM tool. SIEM tool is very important, and Splunk, Wasuk are two very, very important tool. It is slightly complex for beginners to understand, but we make it so easy. We'll make you so good in Splunk and Wasuk SIEM tools. It's actually SIEM XDR tool. So these tools. Then we have intrusion detection system. So the difference between intrusion detection system and SIEM is that intrusion detection system is just like our security guard. Security guard is of an organization. So whoever comes in, they do some a minimal checkup. They do some frisking, make sure that you are not carrying any weapon into the for example, if you are going to a big government, maybe you are going to an embassy, you will be frisked to make sure that you are not carrying anything. So that is something like a security guard. And so we can visualize intrusion detection system in such kind of system. What about SIEM? SIEM is like a security office. They collect a lot of data from various corners, not just from the security guard. They have CCTV cameras. They have, they get information from, various platforms, and they analyze everything. Then they try to identify any weakness in the system. That is nothing but SIEM. So anything unusual which is going on, they will detect it and they try to block it. So this is nothing but SIEM. And Wasuk is a very popular open source, very attractive tool. It can identify most of the modern threats, and I will teach you how we can configure it. And when you become a professional cybersecurity expert after our CCP program, we will definitely be able to hope you are able to see my slide. Somebody has mentioned me that, share the slide. Yeah, definitely. I'll be sharing the slide later. Okay, so time being, please concentrate on the class. Definitely, I'll be, sharing the slide. So we have all these different type of tools like, Snort. We have Surikata. Surikata is a very nice intrusion detection system. I will teach you how various type of attack, like a cross-site scripting attack, SQL injection attack, how we can detect, how we can prevent. So we have a intrusion prevention system, intrusion detection system. I'll teach you. Okay. So let me quickly go through, because we do not have a lot of time to go in detail to this. So these are all various tools that we will be definitely covering. So cybersecurity, when we compare cybersecurity with human anatomy, this is actually a diagram to show what is anatomy of cybersecurity. So we can say that SOC, what is this SOC, which is nothing but Security Operations Center. And, most of the entry-level job in the field of cybersecurity, nothing but SOC analyst, Security Operations Center analyst. So SOC is nothing but considered as the brain of this cybersecurity, because it is controlling all the function, decision-making, almost like your brain. Then we have SIEM, which is nothing but your eye and ears. You have a constant observation. You listen, you watch, you hear. So it basically, you monitor your network activity for any anomalies, like the eyes and ears. Then we have the heart of your cybersecurity, which is nothing but cryptography, encryption. What are the different type of? We will be teaching you how to use various type of encryption algorithm like AES. We start with the triple DS, AES, ECC, RSA cryptographic algorithm, elliptic curve cryptographic algorithm, how we can use it, and what are the basic elements, how we can use it for confidentiality, for encrypting files, how we can authenticate people, how we can have digital signatures with these tools, etc., etc. So that is the heart of cybersecurity. Then we have intrusion detection system, which is nothing but our nervous system, which transmits signal for quick responses, like monitoring any suspicious activities. It is akin to your network system. Then the infrastructure, or the bone, the infrastructure which gives the complete IT infrastructure, are like the bones of our body. Then we have security policies, because we need to have proper security policies in a cybersecurity. They're like our liver, because they have to detoxify the network by allowing protecting or safeguarding. We should have proper safeguarding practices, like the liver. Then we have filtering system. We have filtering system, and that is very similar to our kidney. That it has to filter sensitive information to prevent unauthorized access. So we will be having blacklist based filtering, whitelist based filtering, etc. Then data flow, that is nothing but our blood, which transport your vital information throughout the network. And finally, the antivirus, which is nothing but our immune system, how it has to detect and eliminate any harmful infections. So very similar to our skin and so on. So this is actually a very nice, interesting cybersecurity aspect. Now let me come to our cybersecurity lab architecture. We are going to see, as you know, that many of our cybersecurity activities are, you are not allowed to do it in a normal environment. If at all, if you try to, scan a network, scan a target without permission, it is unethical and it is illegal. You may finally land up in, in the legal situation, illegal entanglement, you'll be in. So it's always better not to use our regular normal network. Instead, we need to create our own cybersecurity environment. And that is very interesting. We create a host-only network. It's like a contained network of virtual machines. Okay, so that is what. So it is something like this. Okay, we have, for example, we are going to use VM virtual machine, like we are going to use VMware or VirtualBox. So we can use this type of virtual machine supporting platforms. Then we install various operating systems like Kali Linux. We use Parrot OS. We use Ubuntu Server. We use Metasploit separately or part of Kali Linux. We use Windows Server. Okay, we use Windows Server. We use Windows machine. They all will be running in a virtual machine or in a sandbox, and then you can actually make the communication possible. And we will teach you how to create a lab on your machine, and you can practice any kind of even any red teaming activity without affecting this, rest of the network. And we will, that is an interesting part of the course, and we'll make you to do this job very clearly and cleanly. And so this is the kind of, actually many international cybersecurity certification program, everything that, especially lab-oriented certification program, that you need to practice everything in a lab environment. So they all will provide their own range, cyber range. So the cyber range which our Scolico has is almost our up to the international standard. So when you work with here, you can work in any international cyber range. That is one of the biggest advantage. Okay, right. So now let us, we need to conduct a pen testing activity. So we need to do an ethical hacking activity. For that purpose, I'm going to show you some techniques, some tactics, some procedures. Okay, so to make the attack possible, and for that purpose, we do use some pen testing tool. And one of the popular pen testing tool is nothing but Metasploit framework. And it is actually it is also it is also having a particular workflow that you need to follow. First, you select an exploit, then select a target. For example, in our case, I'm going to show you by using Kali Linux and Windows operating system. Okay, we are going to have two operating systems, and then we will be in a running scenario. We will be generating a payload. We deliver that payload to the target, and let us see what are the things we can actually visualize it. So let us spend some 5 to 10 minutes on that. So let me share my virtual machine. So what I'm going to share you, if all of you can see this is my VMware virtual machine. Actually, you can actually see almost all different operators. I have Parrot OS, I have Ubuntu servers, I have Windows Server, I have Windows machine, I have Kali Linux, I have so many different virtual machines. I will teach you all those techniques in a very interesting way. We can have multiple virtual machines. We can have it. We can configure it. And so for example, here I have Kali Linux, which is running in a virtual machine. I also have Windows Server. So let me have Windows Server. So let me show you. This is actually my Windows Server, Windows machine. Okay, Windows Server machine. Okay, and in Kali Linux, I'm going to show you certain things. For example, for Kali Linux, what I will do, I will actually open a terminal. So let me actually log in. So Kali default password and username is Kali itself. So I will log into the system, and then I will open a terminal. So it's very important to, so we will make you understand the basics of Linux and the command, the file system, the directory structure, and the basic commands. You will become very good in Linux and Linux command, so well as we proceed. So I'll give a command like IP address. I'll give an IP address command. Then I'll come to know that what is the IP address of this machine, which is nothing but I have highlighted here 192.168.135.137, which is nothing but a NAT networking. So I will be discussing what is this network configuration, what is this network connectivity, everything. I will make you understand it very well. No need to worry time being. So time being, I am going to make it as a host-only network so that my IP address will be restricted only into this particular confined host-only network like sandbox, and nothing will go out of this network that we have here. So we have a network of machines, virtual machine, as I have shown in the diagram. So in the Kali Linux now, when I say IP address, it will give the IP address as 192.168.100.130. Okay. So in Windows, let me open a terminal. One minute. Let me open a terminal by typing in CMD, and here I will be giving command ipconfig. Sorry, ipconfig, there is no space. So when you give ipconfig command, immediately it has given the IP address of this target is 192.168.100.151. So 151 is our IP address of the target. So now let me ping from here. Okay, let us say ping 192.168.100.151. I have given a ping command, and you can see that now the ping command is working. It is sending some request message to the target, and it is giving you reply. That means from Kali Linux, I can communicate with Windows Server without any problem. So let me stop here. Similarly, I'll go to Windows Server. From Windows Server, let me ping to our Kali Linux. So 192.168.100.130. 130 is the IP address of the Kali Linux. So it is also replying, So Windows, it will only send 4 requests and waiting for 4 reply, and all 4 reply came back successfully. But in Kali Linux, if you give simply ping command, it will give infinite number of ping requests, and you need to stop it. Otherwise, you have to give a count, how many number of ping requests it has to send, everything. So you don't have to, worry too much about that. So now let me show briefly. There are so many attacks can be generated. I'm going to generate a payload, and it is generated by using a command which is called as MSF, stands for Metasploit Framework. MSF. Okay, and during payload creation, I'll be using a tool which is called as MSF Venom. MSF Venom, and in that MSF Venom, I'll be specifying what type of target you have. I'll say that it's a Windows target, and what is the IP address of the machine from where the attack is generated, which is nothing but Kali Linux IP address I'll give, and I'll also give a port number 444. Okay, then I'll create a payload. Okay, all the theoretical aspect, how it is being done, everything I'll be definitely covering you in depth. And when you give this command, I'll be generating a payload.exe. Payload.exe, and this very interesting payload. This payload, if you can deliver to Windows, from Windows, you can get a reverse interpreter. Okay, which is also called as a metapreter. And what is the advantage? Being at the attacker machine, I can get full control of Windows, including the keyboard scan and everything, So this is what we want to deliver. So in order to deliver this payload, what I will be doing, I will be actually opening one more terminal, and in this terminal, I will be actually, running a Python-based HTTP server. It's very simple. No need to confuse. The Python means it's very simple language. We will train you in Python. We will make you understand the various aspects of Python. And here, using Python, how can I start a server? I'll be just, typing a command. So now I'll enter it. Now it is serving an HTTP server from this Kali Linux. Okay, so we have actually a payload.exe. If you want, you can give an ls command, and you can look for where is this payload is available. See, this is payload.exe. You can also give ls all command to visualize its size and everything. So you can see the payload.exe, and we'll be discussing about every parameter of this thing in coming, in our classes. So these are all the permission, and it is having about 73 kilobytes. So the size, everything is known. So now what I'm going to do, I already have a terminal running. See, this is a terminal wherein I am running, a server. So now let me go to Windows Server. Assume that this payload is delivered to the target somehow. So for that purpose, I am opening now I am opening now Firefox. Then I'll type http://192.168.100.130/8080. This is the place at which our Python HTTP server is running. I'll just click it. When I click it, it will actually give you the list of all files available in that target. So we actually need to, generate some phishing link or something so that people will be actually, attracted towards this. Okay. So here we'll be getting actually there is a payload.exe. So for this we have to create a link. I will be just clicking on it. It has executed a payload.exe here. Okay, so assume that this is this is being clicked over through some malicious, through some email attachment or something. Okay, now in Kali Linux, I will be generating. I will be actually starting a Metasploit console. Okay, I'll be just typing in. Sorry, I'll be typing in MS of console. Then I press enter. It will be giving you, it will be starting Metasploit framework, because I have not yet started Metasploit framework. So this is your Metasploit framework, and it will take some time to boot in. And now you get a command prompt. And here I'll be giving some parameters. I'll give some parameters like I'll give some IP address of the thing. So I'll be giving setting the payload as Windows. I'm setting the local host as 192.168.130, which is Kali Linux IP address. Then the port number. Then finally I'll give the command run. Okay, and this run will continue until it is waiting for a reverse TCP connection. So here what I do, it will be waiting in the background in Kali Linux. When somebody in Windows go to that particular folder, and double click the payload and click run. Immediately in Kali Linux, you get a meterpreter. See here in Kali Linux, I was simply, suddenly I switched from Windows, in Windows, simply clicked it. Immediately in Linux, I got a meterpreter. Okay. Now in Windows, say for example, I type here, for example, screenshot. I can get a screenshot of the Windows target. Okay. So you can say that there is a file called GTL. This is a JPEG file. In that one, you can visualize the Windows desktop. So for example, there is a tool called EOG, and GH. Sorry, I will open another terminal. I'll open another terminal to visualize it. Here I will say EOG, and this is actually GH. You click it in Windows. You see in Kali Linux, now you get the complete screen print. You get the complete screen print of. So this is actually the screenshot. The desktop of the Windows which is running elsewhere. Okay, you already got it. Okay, so that way you can visualize it. Now I'm going to show you another interesting thing. So now assume that I am in the so now we have total command and control of Windows. Now, what are things we can do? So actually we can do so many things, but now what I'm going to show you is we can actually prepare a key scan. I'll give a key scan start. So what is going to happen if I give this command in Windows machine, any key I am pressing on the keyboard, that will come to Kali Linux. This is what. So I'll simply say key scan start at meterpreter command prompt. Now it is starting. It is running in the background. Any process which is running in the background is called as a daemon. So the daemon is running in the background. Now in Windows, I will just open, for example, let me close this. Let me open a notepad. So I'll say notepad. I'll open a notepad and I'm typing here. Hello. My name is, I'll say Manoj. My bank, I'm typing something in any application. Okay, my bank password is ABCD1234, and I keep typing whatever I am typing with the browser, with your socializing pages, or anything with Facebook or whatever I am typing in will come to Kali Linux. See, now I am typing this. Now let me come to Kali Linux, and here I will be simply giving a command. I'll say key scan dump. I'll give a command, key scan dump command, dump command, dump command. Now you can see this, you read this on here, okay? dumping captured key. These are the things I got. See, now I have typed here what I have typed, notepad, notepad I have typed. Then I pressed shift, then hello, my, then I press shift, then name, then Manoj, then carriage written, which stands for enter key. Then my bank password is ABCD1234. Then carriage written, which is, so whichever key I'm pressing, shift key, carriage written key, caps lock key, whatever keys I press, everything is recorded and sent to Kali Linux. See, this is something which is happening in a Windows server machine. Just imagine. See, without proper security mechanism, many things can happen, right? So this is just to demonstrate. I have so many things to demonstrate. We don't have time for that. So let me come back to slide very quickly. And now, so I've just shown you some Metasploit workflow. I've done some backdoor, created some backdoor, and I've demonstrated keylog. Okay, and we also will be discussing about Surik. I know plenty of them. Right. Now let me come to the last points. There are plenty of entry-level jobs. So once you complete our cybersecurity training, especially the 6-month training, so one month training we have. This is actually kind of an entry-level training, which is actually to upskill your knowledge. If you may be from various background. We will build your skills in the field of network security, basic cybersecurity activities, and everything. So we will prepare you for our final certification program. And once you complete that, you can get into various jobs like SOC analyst, security analyst, IT security support technicians. So here the skills required are networking, Linux, basic security tools, etc. Okay. Then we have offensive security teaming like a red team being active, like ethical hackers, certified pen testers like pen testers, red team specialist, bug bounty hunter, actually finding vulnerabilities in real application. Bug bounty normally, you'll be paid only when you find vulnerabilities in system. Okay, otherwise it's not a full-time job. But otherwise, ethical hacker, pen tester, red team specialist, incident responder, threat intelligence analysis, so on and so. There are plenty of jobs. Even engineering, architecture roles, security engineer, security architect. We'll be discussing about these things when we start the course. Even DevSecOps engineer actually. Then under GRC, governance, risk and compliance job opportunity like security or risk analyst, compliance officer. Even in leadership, when you are, as you become experienced in cybersecurity positions, you may get into the leadership roles like ISO, Chief Information Security Officer, Security Manager, Cybersecurity Consultant, etc. Okay, so the simple career path in cybersecurity, you start as a secure SOC analyst, then you move into penetration tester or incident responder. I've listed out all the job role, what are the things you do over there. Then you grow into a security engineer or a security architect. Then you may reach as a CSO or a consultant, etc. I've already told you what is CSO, etc. So this is actually the whole career path. You can start as a SOC analyst, and to become an SOC analyst, we will actually help you in all aspects, all technical aspects. We will train you, and then you can ace on top international certifications like CompTIA Security Plus, CH, Certificate Ethical Hacker, CISP, which is Certified Information System Security Professional, OSCP, SSCP, etc. There are top certification program, and we will train you into that. We will actually give you even not just training. We will actually give you mock test, mock interviews, and so on. So that will make you prepared. Okay, and we also give more importance to artificial intelligence. So we'll teach you what is artificial intelligence, what are the key capabilities of artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithm, supervised, unsupervised, reinforcement learning algorithm, then the entire AI universe. So we'll be making what are the important aspects of data science and what are the areas where we have some overlap between artificial intelligence and data science. We'll be discussing about that. Then how we can apply artificial intelligence in cybersecurity, and what are the different type of activity we can do, starting with the real-time threat detection, automated incident handling, predictive analytics, reduction of false positives in the systems, and so on. Okay, we have plenty of them, even malware detection, anomaly detection, phishing attack detection. Even recently also we have done a project on phishing detection using artificial neural network we have done. And we'll be making you to practice on multiple AI-based cybersecurity project, like AI-powered intelligent web vulnerability scanner, deep learning-based network intrusion detection system, AI-driven phishing detection system, and so on. So this is actually a list of them. Okay, and we have plenty of such things available with us. And we have actually, Scolico has multiple programs under cybersecurity and AI umbrellas. So we have multiple workshop programs for faculty members. We have our cybersecurity and ethical hacking summer camp, and our flagship cybersecurity 6-month program. Similarly, we have program on artificial intelligence also. Okay, so in order to conclude that, cybersecurity is not something like an afterthought. It's actually a serious reality. It is increasing in scale, in sophistication, and in automation. So definitely, there are a lot of job roles and a lot of job vacancies which are happening in currently, and it's very important that you have to learn, or we can say hands-on learning is very, very important. So we actually, with the support of theoretical knowledge, we have plenty of, almost every week we'll be having a lot of practical experimentation, and we'll give you complete guidance, step-by-step procedure on how to perform these activities, etc. Okay, and then we'll be also talking about various modern tools like SOC, those SOC tools like SIEM tools, intrusion detection system. And another interesting thing, we will train you in CTF challenges, capture the flag challenge, because these days many companies will recruit people by conducting a CTF challenge to prove your wit and knowledge in that particular domain, where a hidden flag need to be discovered. How we can find it out? There are procedure. There are so many techniques. We'll be teaching you. We will guide you. We will make you to do CTF challenges and so on. Okay, that is the way how we actually make you fit for wonderful job opportunities. So, having said that, thanking you all. If you have any doubts or concern, definitely you can ask me. And so, with that, I'm completing my my presentation.
Thank you, sir, for that insightful session.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Anamika, a student coordinator at Scolico. So our company Scolico is an online platform offering courses in AI and cybersecurity, and you can explore all our courses in our website. Currently, we are offering a cybersecurity course for 6 months and 1 month. So our 1 month courses are set to begin by May 2nd, and our 6 month will begin by May 15th. So about our today's faculty, Dr. Manoj, we were very honored to have you. He is an ex-professor at Defense University, Ethiopia, and a cybersecurity and AI specialist. And he's the one who has guided us through today's session. Now we'll move on to a Q&A. So students can ask their doubts right now, and sir will be happy to clarify them for you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Sure. If you have any doubt, you can ask me.
Hello, sir. May I please ask you a question?
Yeah, please.
So, I'm an English graduate student, and how can someone like me benefit from the 1 month cybersecurity program?
Actually, even without any technical background, actually this course gives you so many practical digital surveillance techniques. We will impart you many cybersecurity awareness skills. Like for example, let me tell you, you want to identify a phishing mail, how we can identify fake website, how we can detect social engineering attack and everything. Because most of the course contain tools. Only thing we need to tool means like any other tool, like our day-to-day life, we use many tools, whether it is software tool or non-software tool. So we will make you to practice those things. Okay, so we will help. For example, you will learn how to protect your emails, how you can protect your bank accounts, how you can protect your social media, how we can protect our devices, our data from hacking, etc. So these things, even anyone who can understand the basic language skill, that is enough. Even without knowing any language skills, language skill in a sense, programming language skill, they can very comfortably can actually understand many aspects of cybersecurity. Okay, and in fact, there are so many cybersecurity roles, like for example, security analyst. Okay, like entry-level security analyst, and for example, sometimes compliance and documentation specialist, Even sometimes there is something called as a cybersecurity content writer. If you remember, I just have mentioned about purple team. So along with red team and blue team, there's a purple team. They actually have to make collaboration between these two. They help actually make communication between the blue teamers and red teamers. So there are a lot of opportunities in that domain also. To have a kind of a collaborative environment between these group of people. And additionally, you will learn how attackers think, how to improve basic, for example, analytical and, reasoning skills and everything. Okay. So, so we can say that it's not so difficult for someone from, for example, such a humanities background can actually easily get into cybersecurity. And our training is in such a way that we do everything from scratch. Everything from scratch. We have actually a lot of bridging activities. If at all if you find a difficulty in a certain aspect, we conduct some bridging class, and that way we will make you to slowly get into even serious aspects of cybersecurity. So it is highly possible for you to adapt yourself into cybersecurity training without any problem.
Thank you, sir, for answering my question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, sir, after completing course, what are the job roles can go? If you remember, I have actually shown a few slides about the job roles, in cybersecurity. I have mentioned, so I have actually started with entry-level jobs like SOC analyst, security analyst, IT security support, support, IT security technician, job. So there are plenty of job. Like when you get into some advanced level, like there are pen tester, the red team specialist, bug bounty hunters, incident responders, security architects, security engineers, even DevSecOps, ops engineers. So there are plenty of job roles in the field of cybersecurity.
Hi, sir. Even I have one small doubt.
Yeah, please, Abhishek. Yeah.
So, how can we identify if a student should go for a 6 months program instead of a 1 month?
Yeah, actually, during for our 1 month program, we actually upskill your knowledge in the field of cybersecurity by introducing you to networking, operating systems. Primarily the Linux operating system, Linux commands, basic tools, basics of cryptography, and things like that. Okay, so during this 1 month, we will give you all necessary basic skills for cybersecurity. Even some CTF activities also will be solved. But only for the 6-month program, we will be having, we'll be doing a lot of projects. We have a capstone, and we get into advanced tools like SIEM tools, Splunk, Surikata, these all, even intrusion prevention system tools, advanced firewall tools. These all we will be able to cover only in a longer session, like a 6 months training program. Okay, even Python program, packet capturing analysis, different packet capturing libraries like libpcap libraries, SCAPI based Python programming, then packet capturing and analysis using artificial intelligence techniques and so on. So we do a lot of activities using artificial intelligence technique like random forest algorithm, artificial neural network based algorithm, and so on. Okay, so this require a lot of time. Okay, but whoever they want to switch, from a particular profession to another, into the cybersecurity profession, this 1 month will actually give them sufficient period to analyze themselves. Like, is that really possible for them to switch? We will, as I told you, we will upskill them. Irrespective of their background, we'll give them all basic skills that are essential for cybersecurity. We will train them, and that is this actually this period. Is that clear?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any other questions? You can even type in your questions. You can even ask me in Malayalam also. Okay. എന്തെങ്കിലും ഡൗട്ട് ഉണ്ടോ ആർക്കെങ്കിലും? If no more doubts, let us wind up the session, right? Anamika, shall we wind up?
Yeah, sir, sure.
Yeah, so I think, so thank you very much for all join today's session. We are looking forward you to join the program. So we'll be having some wonderful time together. And thank you very much. Thank you, Anamika. Thank you, Skoliko team, and thank you all. So have a wonderful night ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.